Hello and welcome to Code Over Time. In this video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Varcade Games, which is the project that you will hopefully be joining me in working on. I will run through the website, the details, show you a little bit about how to administer the site, and then I will show you how to actually create a copy of the code so that you can work on the project yourself. So let's jump right in. This is Varcade Games. I've already logged in with an account. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But basically, as I've said in previous videos, this is essentially a Netflix for browser games. So as you open the website, you will find there is a featured game. Our featured game is Rock, Paper, Scissors, Apocalypse. If I click the info button, you'll see we get a little bit more information here. It is a fun but intense online multiplayer version of the classic game. There's a leaderboard, but on this particular deployment of the website, I haven't actually played yet, but you'll see that in a minute. And then we've got stats. And again, I haven't played the game yet. We will. This is all multiplayer content. And that's what our featured game looks like. Now, if I scroll down, you'll see that I've got a bunch of other games here because, you know, a Netflix for browser games would look pretty boring if we actually didn't have a reasonable selection of games. But all of these games are just placeholder because it makes the site look nicer. The one game that functions is Rock, Paper, Scissors, Apocalypse. So we will look at that in a minute. But basically what I did to fill out the site to show you what it looks like is I used AI to generate a whole bunch of kind of silly images like Heavy Metal Gear Solid we have here. We have a B RPG, which is a play on a J RPG. We have Zombie Ants from Space. We have Cat Olympics, which I think would be a fun game. Battle Grannies is the game that I really want to play, and the game I really want to make, actually. So maybe I'll make that at some point in the future. But this is essentially what the site looks like. To anyone who's ever used Netflix, it should be familiar because I essentially lifted the design from the Netflix design. And what's worth calling out is you see a lot of repetition across the games here, and that's because we have an active games section, but we also have a section for single player games and we have a section for multiplayer games. We also have a coming soon section which shows games that are not yet active, but we want to kind of tease to our player base. So essentially we have a list of all of our games here, and then if you want to look at only single player games, you can look here, and if you want to look at only multiplayer games, you can look here. Now, the way this website works is, of course, we have some sort of administration behind the scenes. So this is, for anyone familiar with Django, this is a Django admin page. And if I come down and go into our games, you will see here is a list of all of our games. And if I open up Shooty Shooty Bang Bang, for example, and I scroll down, you can see the game state is coming soon. And if you remember, down below here, we have a coming soon game. So if I change this to active and I hit save, now when I go back to my page, to my Varcade Games website, if I refresh, there's now no coming soon games there, but Shooty Shooty Bang Bang now appears in our multiplayer, and it also appears in our global games list. So the website itself is dynamic, and you know, when you're building real world software, it's important that you have this level of configuration over the content that you're working on, because we're not just building a static web page that, you know, we have to go and modify code every time we want to add a new game. We absolutely don't want to do that. So we have these sorts of admin panels. You can also manage things like users. I have a lot of users here because I was running a load test. So I created a bunch of fake users for the sake of testing out the website. And you can also manage, maybe I want to go in and a user is being bold, so I want to delete that user, and you can do that here. So that's what the website looks like. That's what the administration looks like. So let's actually play a game. So if I go in and play our Rock, Paper, Scissors, Apocalypse, we can see we end up at the game page here. Now, this particular game is in the style of a fighting game. And the reason I created this game in the way that I did was specifically because you don't need to be an expert game developer to actually jump in and work on this game. It's very simple. The logic is quite simple. But it does actually expose us to a lot of interesting concepts like 2D graphics, real-time networking. We work with like audio assets and image assets. We don't have, in this game engine called Phaser that we're using, we don't actually have things like nice layout managers like HTML and CSS. So we got to think about how do we actually lay out buttons and how do we track clicks and do things like that. So that's why this is an interesting project, I think, for people to work on. You get to see what does it actually look like behind the scenes when you want to build your own UI. So I'm going to enable the music and I'll give you a quick preview of what this game looks like. So we have single player and multiplayer. We'll go into single player for now. I did add a bit of backstory, so there's some lore here. I'm not going to read through it all. You can do that yourself once you have the project up and running. But basically, I wanted to add some story, again, just to make sure that the product actually has a flow through it, like a real world product would. I didn't want this to just be a demo, okay? So we can skip that. Now we've got our character select. And on this screen, you'll notice we've got some blacked out characters here. Now, I wanted to add character unlocks because, again, that's what a real product has. And when you start to build real products, you know, it's very easy to build a demo of a rock, paper, scissors game, okay? But when you actually want to build a real world product, you got to think about things like character unlocks, and you got to think about, you know, progression through various different scenes and stuff like that in the game. So in doing that here, you'll get to learn some of the complexities behind doing that. It might seem simple, but when you go to build real world software, you often encounter these things that have weird edge cases and you have to solve these problems. So that's why we tried to build this as a somewhat full featured game. So I'm going to select our character Mambo here. You can see Mambo has some stats where she's particularly strong in scissors, but she is weak against paper. So if we fight, we also get a bit of backstory for Mambo, again, trying to make this feel like a real product, and all of the work that goes with creating that kind of goes into this. Okay, so now we're in the battle scene. So our characters take center stage, and now you're selecting your weapon, either rock, paper, or scissors. And we go ahead and have our battle. Now, I did code up the AI here so that your AI character, they are following some logic and they do get progressively more difficult. This isn't just random rock, paper, scissors picks coming from our AI enemy here. They do get progressively more difficult, and the reason for that is we can't just, in rock, paper, scissors, we can't just be random, because random is actually very difficult to play against in rock, paper, scissors. So we won our first game. We've got our end of the match screen here. We can see he's pretty beat up, and we move on to our next character. And our next character is a robot called Hogosha, and he is a robot specifically designed to play rock, paper, scissors, and he's from Japan. So as we play here, this character is a little bit more difficult to figure out the AI. I'm not going to tell you how the AI works. That's going to be a fun challenge for the future. But that is our game. That is what single player looks like. But the more interesting part of this game, I think, is the multiplayer. So let's go ahead and try fire up a multiplayer game. So what I'm going to do is, I've already opened up another window here. Let me just modify our magnification. So I had to open up a new private window because we need two separate accounts running in separate browsers to actually play the multiplayer game. So when I select multiplayer, what happens is you get this pop-up, and this pop-up isn't within the game. This pop-up is actually part of the website. And the reason for that is that games that are added to Varcade Games can choose to hook into an existing matchmaker. So if you're a game developer and you don't want to worry about building a matchmaker, but you want to be able to do matchmaking, create a multiplayer game, this functionality is built into the website. So you can go ahead and create a game. I'm going to select a character and press fight. Now we're just waiting for an opponent, okay? So we need someone else to join. So our other user over here will go to join, see available games. John Doe is there, and I'm going to hit join game. I'm going to select a different character. We're going to go ahead and fight. You can see both screens start to update now as we're ready to play the game. You can see we've now got our account names at the top right corners as opposed to character names, which we had previously. And we will go ahead and play our game. And this is all happening basically through a game server. There's real-time networking communication going on here. And this will work across the internet. It's all kind of synchronized in lockstep so that the countdown is happening at the same time, and that one client won't get out of sync with another client. So I'm just going to let this game play down here. In our version of rock, paper, scissors, if you don't make a selection, you'll see they throw out a kind of a broken looking hand. So if I select something with our character Mambo, you'll see our other character just throws out a kind of an empty hand. If I don't select with Mambo, she throws out his voodoo skull. So he won the first round. Let's let him win the second round just for the sake of getting through this a little bit more quickly. Paper and rock. And if you remember, I said earlier on in single player, Mambo is actually pretty weak against paper. So if I want her to lose quickly, all I need to do is keep attacking her with paper when she keeps selecting rock. Okay, one more should do it. And there we go. Billy Bob wins, and you can see she is a little bit beat up, and he is in good shape here. Fun fact, we'll talk more about some of the game design, but I've left like a bunch of little things in there. So she is actually based on a voodoo priestess, and she says, "We'll meet again in the next world, don't be late." I took that from the Jimi Hendrix song Voodoo Child. And he says, "The forest will always prevail," which is a saying from Brazil, which is where he's from. He's from the Amazon rainforest. So some little Easter eggs we're able to put in our game there. So we can return both to the main menu. And let's go back to our website. Now, I mentioned earlier we do have stats and we have leaderboards and stuff like that. So now when I click info, you'll see that we've got a leaderboard here because Billy Bob won that game and John Doe lost. So now he's got a point, okay? And if I go to stats, you can see I've played one game. I haven't won any. I've lost one. I selected rock 6 times, paper once, scissors twice, and made no selection twice. So that's our stats, and they kind of build up as you play the game over time. If I go to the other account, which I can do now, we will see our stats are a little bit different because I've played one, I've won one, and I have different selections over there. So that is our whirlwind tour of Varcade Games. The last thing I want to show you in this video is GitHub. If we go over to GitHub, you can go to github.com. If you just search for it, there'll be links in the description of this video as well. But if you go to CoT Over Time, Varcade Games, you can find the project here. And you can jump in, you can go look at the code. For example, if I go into game RPS, which is rock, paper, scissors, and if I go into the game client, and if I go into assets, source, then assets, then characters, you can see, actually no, let's go to packed textures, which is a little bit different. So we can look at some of the artwork going on in the game, and you can see a bit of a spoiler here. You can see some of the other characters before they actually get unlocked, and you get a sense of what's going on in the artwork. But this is where all of the code lives. It's on GitHub. You can come here now and you can make a copy. So what you need to do is up here where it says fork, and it says fork your own copy of CoT Over Time Varcade Games. Basically, when you click fork, what it's going to do is it's going to create a new repo. So my GitHub account, my personal one, is the Black Knight. Repository Varcade Games. I'm going to copy the trunk branch only. Now, in this case, you want to deselect that, and you want to copy everything over because there's a couple of tags there that are worth copying. You've got a description there, and I'm going to hit create fork. And what will happen is now, if you look at the top, the Black Knight Varcade Games, I now have my own copy of Varcade Games. So I can work on this. I can make whatever changes to the code I want. I now own this, just like you would if you create your own fork. And you can make changes, you can commit changes, and you can follow along with our videos, get this set up, and basically start working this project and start learning a little bit about software engineering. That is all I've got for this video. What happens next is you need to make a decision. First off, you need to pick what platform you're going to work with. So Varcade Games, you can work on Windows, you can work on Linux, you can work on OS X. I'm going to put a link to a video tutorial for how to set it up on each individual platform. They'll appear somewhere here in the video. And basically you can follow along with that to get this set up on your local machine. In terms of the stats for your machine that you will need to run this project, I've actually got this running on a Microsoft Surface Go, which is a Microsoft tablet, which is pretty small. So it'll run on a pretty low powered device. So hopefully it will work on most machines. The Windows setup is a little bit involved, but it's fine. You only need to do it once, and hopefully it won't take too long. But if you're on Windows, you can follow that tutorial and you can go through. And once you have the project set up, you can then move on to the next videos where I'll talk through specific different components of the project, and we'll have some hands-on work so that you can actually get your hands on and start coding and start playing around with this product and making it your own. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.